The United States has been taken advantage of for 40 years. The United States has been a laughingstock for years and years. That's why this gentleman is built in Taiwan instead of building here. It would have been better if he built here. If we had a president that knew what they were doing, and we had a lot of them very bad on trade.
He's imposing a 25% tariff on all imports from Mexico, Canada, an extra 10% from China. And look at the reaction on the big board today. All right. So the Dow at the moment is down 1.4%. You add that to yesterday, and you're about 2.8% off in 2 days of trading. The NASDAQ is down even more. It's about 3.6% overall in just 2 days now. Now, Trump is saying there's no room left for negotiation. This is a deal that is set. The market starting today in the red. Sharp sell-off yesterday, Dana, as I just mentioned there. Wow.
And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that big picture, the president's plans will turbocharge the economy and help improve the lives of everyday Americans.
Well, the madman finally did it. Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico, as well as additional tariffs on China, and the markets reacted immediately to the news by plummeting, which should be grounds for impeachment by his own standards, because back in 2012, he tweeted, if the Dow drops 1,000 points in 2 days, the president should be impeached immediately. He said it, not me, so somebody in Congress should get the ball rolling on that stat. But as you saw, even Fox News couldn't really spin this because there's no way to spin something that's undeniably bad for working class people. The best that they can offer is some bullshit promise from the Treasury Secretary that one day this is going to turbocharge the economy, which is a circuitous way of saying that Americans are going to suffer a lot in the short term. And that they will, because for starters, the cost of groceries is going to go up since we import a lot of agricultural goods from both Canada and Mexico. Fruits, vegetables, meat, dairy. It's a lot. Not to mention the cost of cars, the cost of electronics, some clothing brands like Nike and Levi's, gas, plastic-based products, oils, minerals, construction materials such as lumber, metal, steel, aluminum. It's all going to go up in price, and aluminum in particular is going to affect the cost of everything from housing to soda cans. So virtually everything is going to get more expensive for this bullshit tariff stuff. But this is just the base price increase that we can expect, because we haven't even factored in the retaliatory tariffs, which will make the cost of goods go up even higher. And unfortunately for all of us, Canadian Prime Minister expectedly announced retaliatory tariffs immediately after Donald Trump's tariffs went into effect. And Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, also announced tariffs from their province. And he politely let us know that Canada, contrary to popular belief, does have us by the balls.
The United States launched a trade war against Canada, their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. At the same time, they're talking about working positively with Russia, appeasing Vladimir Putin, a lying, murderous dictator. Make that make sense. The U.S. tariffs came into effect in the early hours of this morning, and so did the Canadian response. Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do.
I don't start a tariff war, but we're going to win this tariff war. Right off the hop, I've directed the LCBO, we're the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world, to remove every bit of U.S. alcohol off the shelves. I know my good friend, the governor of Kentucky, he's losing his mind right now. I said, you better talk to your president. Mitch McConnell, senior senator from Kentucky, they're losing their mind. We purchase over $1 billion of alcohol, 3,600 products, 35 states. It's going to hit them. We call them the kitchen table issues. Then we're going to cancel Starlinks right away from Elon Musk. Not that $100 million makes a difference for them, but it's principle. I've directed the procurement of over $30 billion of goods, not to go to the U.S., to make sure we buy Ontario first. And if we can't find it in Ontario and we can't build it in Ontario, we go across the country. We have 51 tariff-free agreements with countries around the world. We're going to diversify our trade. If they want to try to annihilate Ontario, I will do everything, including cut off their energy, with a smile on my face.
Yeah, so we're officially entering the find out phase after fucking around. And as Trudeau pointed out, all of this is so dumb. We are needlessly punishing our own allies for no reason while simultaneously cozying up to our enemies like Vladimir Putin after he invaded another fucking country. I mean, it's unparalleled stupidity that can't even be justified by Fox News. And on the subject of Donald Trump punishing allies and rewarding enemies, I just love how the MAGA cultists enjoyed watching Donald Trump and JD Vance beat their chests and berate Zelensky as if he chose to get invaded by Russia. Yet when it comes to other world leaders like Benjamin Netanyahu, all of that bravado goes out the window. In fact, here's supposed tough guy Donald Trump pushing in the chair for Benjamin Netanyahu, a war criminal wanted by the International Criminal Court, by the way. I wonder how his cultists feel about this submissive cuck behavior. I bet that he would do the same thing to Vladimir Putin and even lick his boots if he asked him to. The fact that a single American voted for this fucking imbecile is a disgrace. It is an international embarrassment, and that shame will follow the people who voted for him around for the rest of their lives, which will gradually get worse thanks to the actions of this administration. And things will get worse, to be clear, because Canada isn't the only country imposing retaliatory tariffs, since all three of our victims are expectedly striking back.
So the Chinese retaliated, following suit with the World Trade Organization and slapping a 15% tariff on U.S. chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton, adding a 10% tariff on other U.S. foods imported into China, like soybeans. Canada also firing back, imposing 25% tariffs on $20 billion of U.S. imports, with that number going up to $100 billion of U.S. imports under 25% tariff in 21 days. Mexico will announce Sunday what retaliation tariffs they will impose.
And you know it pains Fox News to admit that, but it's true. The cost of goods is going to increase a lot. But we still haven't even reached the ceiling yet because Donald Trump announced even more tariffs on Canada for retaliating. We started this, and then Canada responded, and Trump is basically saying, well, since you responded, we're going to respond again, which will obviously prompt another response by Canada. But he wrote this on Truth Social. Please explain to Governor Trudeau of Canada that when he puts on retaliatory tariff on the United States, our reciprocal tariff will immediately increase by a like amount. And he made this tweet while the stock market was plummeting. So sky's the limit in terms of how expensive things are going to get for all of us, because this is only the beginning of what is likely going to be a long and grueling trade war that's happening for no fucking reason. And as Dean Baker explained in A Piece for Common Dreams, this is effectively going to amount in a $3,000 sales tax per year on American consumers. Not to mention, if he actually passes the $4.5 trillion in tax cuts for the rich that he wants, taxes are going to go up for normal people by more than $1,200 on average. This is according to an estimate from the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. But this is our fate. We're all doomed to suffer now because a bunch of dumbfuck Americans believed him when he said that he'd bring down the cost of eggs. But newsflash, that's not going to happen either. In fact, Trump's Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, admitted as much. And she explained that it might actually be a good idea to buy a chicken. Literally, to buy a chicken and get the eggs directly from the chicken.
So I'm looking at this. The cost of eggs is expected to go up 40%.
Listen, there is no short-term fix.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, I wish I could, snap my fingers and go to the grocery store, Rachel, and your eggs are back down to $2 a dozen. I think the silver lining in all of this is how do we, in our backyards, we've got chickens too in our backyard, how do we solve for something like this? And people are sort of looking around thinking, wow, well, maybe I could get a chicken in my backyard. And it's awesome. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think everyone who isn't a farmer right now wants to be.
You hear that? It's time to be a farmer, folks. So put on your overalls and get a chicken. It's almost like it would be funny if it wasn't so sad. These people have no idea what the average day-to-day experience is like for normal Americans. Do they honestly expect people to raise chickens? Like, where are you going to put the fucking chicken? In your apartment? Are you going to let it shit everywhere while you go to work? It's so dumb, and this solution is being recommended, especially at a time when bird flu is running rampant throughout the country, and while there's a blackout on health communications from the federal government, it's It makes my head almost explode because of the fucking stupidity of the people in charge. But on a serious note, just step back for a moment and think about all of the things that's happening right now. Aside from the imposition of tariffs on allies, Donald Trump is deregulating at a fast pace. He's cutting even more revenue to the federal government through tax cuts for the rich. He's imposing austerity on working class people. And it's gotten so bad that economists are starting to worry about all of this leading to a fucking recession. And the Atlanta Fed is just straight up predicting one at this point. And as Saika Chakrabarti points out, combine this with gutting the federal government, cutting Medicaid, disabling Social Security by firing half its workforce, destroying manufacturing, and mass deportations. And I think we're looking at something well beyond the Great Recession and approaching the Great Depression. On top of this, Elon and Trump are against printing money, so I don't see us doing the kind of stimulus needed to get out of it. And as this Twitter user put it, if I wanted to crash the economy, I think I'd put on indiscriminate tariffs, push cheap labor out of our country, slash public jobs, cut public spending, promote an alternative to the dollar, and incentivize every global ally look to partner with China. Exactly. We're not even just talking about gross incompetence here. It's almost like he's trying to crash the economy, which sounds absurd. But if you realize that there's a lot that could be gained from him and rich oligarchs if the economy crashes, then it kind of makes sense. Saika argues, it really is confusing why Trump would want to intentionally massively shrink the U.S. economy. None of this is due to external circumstances. He is manufacturing a recession. But it makes sense when you realize his goal is to create something like Russia, where the economy is run by a few oligarchs loyal to him. Creating that state is hard in a large, dynamic, powerful economy with too many actors who can oppose him. So he's accelerating, concentrating money and power into the hands of his loyalists while he crashes the rest out. So it's plausible that he might literally be trying to crash the economy to consolidate power. And when you think about it in that context and the ulterior motives that he might have as an oligarch himself, it makes sense in that context. But Crystal Ball responded to Shaikat's theory and added some additional thoughts about Elon Musk and his role in this and how he might benefit from an economic crash.
I would say that at this point, until proven otherwise, the primary actor in the government and in the economy is actually Elon. So I think it makes sense to think in terms of Elon's incentives here and what he may actually want to accomplish. And if you think back at the last economic crashes, both in COVID and in the 2008 financial crash, while initially everyone suffered, including the rich, out of both, the rich were able to buy up assets on the cheap and emerged even wealthier and more powerful than before. So in 2008, not only did they get their own custom bailout, but they were able to buy up housing stock at absurdly low prices. The rich got richer than ever, inequality skyrocketed, and the big banks got bigger than ever. Same deal with the COVID era recession. So while, again, everyone suffered initially, there was a huge bailout package, which, yes, did benefit ordinary people. But if you look at who came out really on top after COVID, after all was said and done, you could see people like Elon Musk, people like Jeff Bezos, people like Mark Zuckerberg getting far wealthier. Their net worths, which were already very high, skyrocketed beyond anyone's wildest dreams. So are they thinking that another economic crash would once again inure to their benefit? Here's the other piece that's worth thinking about as well. Crash and crisis leads to governments and authoritarian leaders claiming more power for themselves. They can use the crisis and the emergency as a justification for taking on extraordinary powers and for taking extraordinary measures, again, measures that can be custom fit to primarily benefit oligarchs like Elon Musk. What's more, in both cases, the economic crash in 2008 and the COVID crash both helped to facilitate the rise of fascist governments. So in 2016, obviously Trump 1.0, and now here we are back again, Trump 2.0. Obviously, that is an aim that Elon and Trump would both themselves support. So I don't know, guys. Well, we're running around here going, like, what are they thinking with these tariffs while they're slashing government spending? Don't they know that this is going to cause a massive contraction? Can't they see the stock market crashing? Can't they understand how this is going to be devastating for the economy? Maybe they do understand, and maybe that's kind of the point.
And that's a really scary thought, but it makes perfect sense. A crisis can easily be used as a justification to concentrate even more power and restrict even more civil liberties. For example, in response to the anti-genocide protests on college campuses, Trump just announced that all federal funding will stop for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests. These are not illegal protests, by the way. Agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. No masks. Thank you for your attention to this matter. In other words, no free speech for people who oppose their tuition money or tax dollars supporting a foreign country doing a genocide. That is just straight up unconstitutional, but I take it that all of the free speech absolutists aren't going to have shit to say about that. But to be fair, Democratic governors were also pretty ruthless to these protesters, albeit to a lesser extent than what Trump is proposing. But I mean, just for a second, imagine a situation where the cost of living surges. Not hard to imagine, but if that happens, then poverty may spike. If the Social Security checks start to get delayed, and people start to get really pissed off, that could trigger a response from the public where they take to the streets and protest. That right there could give Trump the opportunity to show a force of strength by crushing them, thus making him even more powerful. And I don't think it's unreasonable to consider that this is something that he wants, because it's not like they're oblivious to how unpopular these things that they're doing are. Tesla sales are down, their shares have dropped since Trump took office, and Elon Musk's approval rating is also tanking, so his toxicity is affecting his company's brands. So he wouldn't be doing all of these things that are unpopular if he didn't think there was a massive upside one day, like there was with COVID. But aside from Elon Musk, America's honeymoon with Donald Trump is also officially over, since his approval rating is now in the red. And it's probably only going to get worse from here, but it's starting to actually fall out from under him, as Harry Anton of CNN explains.
The word here that I would use to describe Trump is awful. In fact, the only person who does worse than Trump does right now with a +1 net approval rating is himself back in 2017 when he was at -8. So he's doing better than he was.
I was going to say, you could split it another way. He's making gains.
He's making gains, but he's doing worse than everybody else. The average president at this point, get this, plus 27 points on their net approval rating. Donald Trump is doing historically awful. The only person he beats is, again, himself from term number 1.
How about on the issue that, one, he says he was most elected to fix, and he said he would do it on day one, which would be the economy.
On the economy, well, he beat himself on overall, but on the economy, he can't even beat himself. Again, this is historically the worst going back in polling at this point in a presidency, the net approval rating on the economy. He's right now at -4 points. In term number 1, he was at +8 points. Historically, the average is +15 points. He is doing nearly 20 points worse than the average president when it comes to the economy on net approval rating. He is historically doing awful, awful, awful. Weak. And on the issue on which he was elected to, of course, fix, he is doing historically awful. This is not good. If this number holds, you can guarantee his overall approval rating will go down, and it could take his entire presidency with him.
And this also now can change very quickly because of tariffs. I mean, you have a lot of mixed reaction coming in from especially amongst Republicans on what these tariffs are really going to mean. I mean, can these tariffs help the president?
I don't think they're going to help the president, at least in the near term. And the reason why is simply put, look at the opposition. Americans oppose tariffs on Canada. Look at this. You got nearly 2/3 of the country opposing it on Canada, 64%. How about on Mexico? Nearly 3/5 of the country at 59%. We're already dealing with a president who, what we're having is the economy bringing him down. These tariffs, in my mind, will only bring him down further. Again, historically awful on the economy at this point, and the tariffs, I think, will only lead to further deterioration.
Yeah, so up until this point, he's enjoyed a net positive approval rating, but the more unpopular things that he does, the more that's going to continue to trend downward. But I just don't think that he actually cares. Like, Trump wants to be popular, but there are other things that he cares about more than popularity. You know, he's not up for re-election, so he doesn't have to worry about this hurting his chances, assuming he doesn't want to run for re-election and violate the 22nd Amendment. But, like, if he makes out like a bandit and leaves the White House richer than ever, it's all going to be worthwhile to him in the end. It doesn't matter if the rest of the country hates him or suffers greatly for the things that he's doing, so long as him and his oligarch friends profit heavily off of all of these things, that's going to be worthwhile to him. So buckle up, Americans, because things are going to get really ugly fast. And if you know somebody that voted for this asshole, don't be shy. Go ahead and remind them that they imposed all of this chaos on the rest of us. See, they weren't afraid to blame Biden for literally every single fucking thing that went wrong in the country, even if it didn't make sense. So be sure to remind them that all of this unnecessary pain and suffering is being inflicted on all of us because of what they did.
I'm gonna come.
Do not come.
Come.
Welcome to the Come Zone.